believe there is a, this is a discussion item, soliciting input for a response. I believe that there is a no letter option if the consensus of the board is that TCA should not make any written response to this proposed bill or to this letter. If that's what the board wants, I assume that's what the chairs will take under advisement. The agenda item calls for this letter to be finalized after this meeting, taking into consideration whatever comes up in the discussion. And I don't think it's practical for the board itself, the 17 or 20 of us sitting here, to try to craft a letter that's going to be agreeable to 100% of us. So the purpose of this agenda item, as I understand it, is for everybody to have input on the tone of a letter, on particular phrases they think are appropriate or inappropriate. And if you persuade everybody that no letter is a good idea, then I imagine that'll be the outcome.
Thank you, Director Connors, and I understood that completely. My only question at this point procedurally is if this board were to decide no letter is the right option, that would be an action, and thus it should be agendized for action.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, so we'll turn to Director Chafee and then to Director Puckett.
Yes, thank you so much. I think some response is appropriate. So in the world of fair game, you need to set out the facts of a different point of view, and if some of the facts are wrong, that can come out in discussion. I think if the sense of the board is that this is not the right letter, or it shouldn't go out, that staff will take the hint, and it won't. My only comment is, because I'm not really conversant with all the different facts that are set forth, is I would strike the second to last paragraph. I don't like the tone of it. It's a little bit of a dig back. I don't want to do that. And I think you're having meetings all along described by one of the presenters. And so I would take that last paragraph out. Not the last, second to last paragraph.
What does it start with, just so as a reference? So the paragraph.
Yes, I would take that out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think that's happening or has happened, and just, to me, that's kind of throwing it back in his face. I don't think that tone is right.
Right, and we want to have a positive and hopefully get some positive movement. So we have been reaching out to Assemblyman Brough and Senator Bates, but we have not been able to set up a meeting, but we've been working on it for 3 weeks now, or 2 weeks.
But did I misunderstand that there had been meetings with our lobbyist and Senator Bates and others? That I think that's in process, and I'd let it play out, but I don't want to throw it back at them.
No, I agree. I think that a tone is very important of how we address it. So with that, then I want to turn to Director Puckett and then Director Kelly.
It's disgusting.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to present as information that 52 organizations and 48 individuals have submitted formal letters of opposition to AB 1273. The Orange County Council of Governments voted unanimously to oppose AB 1273. Some of the cities and organizations that oppose 1273 include, there are TCA, 11 TCA member cities: Irvine, Laguna Hills, Laguna Woods, Mission Viejo, Newport Beach, Orange, Rancho Santa Margarita, Santa Ana, Tustin, Yorba Linda, Orange County Board of Supervisors, 5th District, and Anaheim, 12. 15 chambers of commerce. There are 22 organizations and businesses. A few of those are California State Parks Foundation, Endangered Habitats League, Orange County Taxpayers Association, Orange County Business Council, Resources Legacy Fund, and there are 14 engineering firms that have opposed AB 1273 and 48 individual letters. So that's just presented as information.
Thank you so much. At this time, I'll move to Director Wagner and then to Director Kelly, then Director Bates. And then Director Green.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. Real briefly, for the record, I thank Director Puckett, and of course my name should be added to the opposition because I voted with this committee to oppose 1273. So long as we know, I am opposed to this legislation, I am also very much opposed to this letter. To start with, it should come from the board. And I thought we made very clear at the last meeting that CEO Cramen overstepped his authority and was not in the least bit clear that he was writing as an individual as opposed to this board. So if there is to be a letter in there, it should not be a letter. It should come from this board. What are the deficiencies in this letter I find striking. The majority of this letter is not substantively wrapped up in the last 4 points. I have a problem with the response to some of those 4 points, but overall, Mr. Brough is setting the history of this organization, and he is not wrong in that history, at least as I understand it. And if we are going to set the record straight, then it ought to be addressing the substance of his arguments as he's laid them out to the committee chairwoman. Oh, that's another problem. This is a letter to the committee chairwoman. The response from this board ought go, if it's going anywhere, and it should not go anywhere, be to the committee chairwoman. This is an issue held in committee. As our lobbyist correctly pointed out, the chair has enormous power. As he pointed out, they've increased the amount of power that committee chairs have up there since I was there. The idea that we send it to the individual author and nitpick is completely missing the boat. If I were a legislator and I got this letter, it would immediately be round filed because it is not going to get any traction and doesn't deserve any traction. A couple of specific points. Item 4, excuse me, or is it 3? I don't remember which. Item 3. TCA is initiating a collaborative process led by our 5 common board members. I think I'm one of those board members. This is the first I've heard about it. Why in the world am I reading about it when I'm studying the agenda to find out about it? It isn't something that's been vetted with me in my office. The CEO says he's been trying to get a hold of me. Well, I'm actually not hard to get a hold of, and Chief Fennessy of the fire department came in on 1 day's notice. And so if you've got these issues, vet them with me. Don't send emails. Talk to me. I am accessible. I find the response to item 2 somewhat unsatisfactory. There's a meeting where they inform of the progress quarterly, and then work to provide input. Well, I'm hearing from representatives of San Clemente that input is getting routinely ignored, and whether that's true or not, the gist of what Mr. Brough is asking for is direct communications, not under the umbrella of all of the city managers, and I don't see a substantive response to that. All we're doing here is stirring up the hornet's nest. This is now a 2-year bill. Let's use the pause that Brough gave to us to work through this rather than send an in-your-face letter that, as my great colleague Mr. Chafee illustrated, is snarky in places and needs to be toned down. This is not how you win friends and influence people up in the state legislature. And I really believe that that we've already overstepped what we should do in trying to oppose this bill. We ought to step back, let these so-called joint discussions with OCTA play out, let real discussions with San Clemente play out, and take the pause that the chairwoman and Mr. Brough have given to us to heart. The letter that should be written to Assemblymember Brough is an apology for the tone and the errors that were in the last letter that came from this organization to Mr. Brough. That's the only thing we would be doing, and I would urge strongly, and I think this is an action item, but if our council says it's not, then it's not. The action should be that we round file this letter.
My great.
Oh, well, one second, okay, I appreciate your comments now, I just, if you want to respond, and then we have other speakers. But there's no way I would ever send an apology letter to Mr. Brough at all.
I think Mr.
At all.
Crowley should. because it was
No,
his letter.
I totally disagree. So I'll turn this to Director, or Vice Chair.
My great friend, Director Supervisor Wagner, your points are well taken. As a matter of fact, the CEO has been trying to get in touch with your office, and we had a difficult time to come up with a mutual timing, but they're gonna be pursuing with your office. Please let me move on with all due respect. And the second one is Assemblyman Bill Brough is my assemblyman. He endorsed me in every election that he ran, and I have utmost respect for him. But we've been trying to set up a meeting with him so that we can sit down and all of us, the board members, as long as we're not gonna be in non-compliance of Brown Act, we wanted to discuss the whole thing with him face to face. We are doing so within the next couple of weeks or so, and also the founding mayor of my beautiful city, Laguna Niguel, Senator Pat Bates, my endorser, the lady that has supported me all along during the past 22 years of my political life. We also have tried to reach her, to sit down with her, to discuss all these face to face in a very civilized fashion. So rather than pointing at the letter who said, let's move on, let's move forward, Director Wagner, and we're gonna be sitting down with the individual that wrote the bill, Assemblyman Bill Brough, and we're gonna clarify any kind of ambiguity, any issues, and then we're gonna report back to this board, and then depending upon the action item, then the entire body of this organization will be voting upon how to pursue next. With that, I want to turn it over to my colleagues.
Thank you for your comments. I want to go to Director Kelly, who was next, and then to Director Bain. Oh, I'm sorry, Director Chiefy, but you,
I did, I have another comment.
oh, okay, so after Director Bain, then I will go to you. Thank you.
Thank you. I too have tremendous respect for Assemblyman Brough, and we have mutually supported